A very good afternoon and a very warm welcome to our prestigious guests, dignitaries, and participants present here. We welcome you all to this valedictory ceremony for the 4th Amity International Conference on Legal Prospects and Challenges of Globalized and Digitalized World, an International Perspective. We are immensely honored to have with us here today Ms. Teresa Lynch, Senior Lecturer and Director of Advocacy and Bar Careers at Birmingham Law School. We will also be graced by the presence of Honorable Mr. Justice Savtantru Kumar, former Judge Supreme Court of India and former Chairperson National Green Tribunal, who is unable to join us at the moment due to some prior commitments. He will be addressing us later in the session. It's a pleasure to welcome our esteemed guest, Ms. Teresa Lynch, Senior Lecturer and Director of Advocacy and Bar Careers at Birmingham Law School. Her position is linked to Law School Center for Professional Legal Education and Research. Teresa has an undergraduate degree in law and an LLM in criminal litigation and has been called to the bar at Gray's Inn. Before joining Birmingham Law School, she was employed by the Crown Prosecution Service. She has keen interest in teaching and researching legal skills as a part of her Director for Advocacy role. She coordinates many student-focused activities such as mooting, debating, negotiating, and mediation. Her current research focuses on anti-social behavior measures that use against street-based sex workers in England and Wales. She also has an interest in legal education with a particular focus on use of advocacy as a teaching and learning tool in both curriculum and as extracurricular activities at the university level. She has published various books, chapters, and papers in many esteemed journals. May I request Ms. Teresa ma'am to please address the gathering. Ma'am, please.
Hi, good morning, welcome. Thank you for that very kind introduction. It's always lovely to spend some time back in Amity Law School. And again, thank you so much for the very kind invitation and introduction there as well. So thank you. Just to kind of note of kind of where I am at the minute, I'm based in England, in Birmingham, and it's morning time and it's very snowy here. So I'm not sure if that interests anyone at all, but that's kind of where I am speaking to you from at the moment. So thank you again to Amity Law School for the invitation, and I'm very pleased to be speaking at this, the valedictory part of the conference. On the conference themes that have been covered over the last days, my own interest naturally navigated towards a theme of digitalisation and challenges in legal education. So whilst I'm able to attend the conference due to prior teaching commitments, unfortunately, the sub-themes of online education and its impact on legal education policy in India, and as includes in the kind of global legal education remit, and also the idea of emerging trends in legal service delivery, so things like legal tech and law tech, and how they may be challenges or perhaps new adventures for legal education as well. So those things really kind of interest me in terms of my own interest in kind of legal education more broadly. So I think those discussions are very timely. I think it's, for me personally, very interesting focus and theme for a conference. I think as the conference kind of literature suggests and the theme seems to suggest, given that the move towards technology driven and globalization has been there kind of niggling away in the past, as a suggestion is, since COVID, these kind of connections seem to be much more kind of obvious and explicit, given the need to work online more broadly as an example, and kind of those kind of connections between the world's legal profession being much more available and at our fingertips as people start to work or have worked from their own homes, using technology in that way. So in my time with you today, I thought I'd spend a little bit of time firstly talking about the developments in my law school in relation to globalization and technology, with a focus on both the curriculum-based studies and also extracurricular activities as well. I thought that I'd focus on some information, I guess, or some of my own kind of work that I've been involved in relation to the link between the profession, future challenges, and in relation to legal education and the impacts that might have for legal education as well. In relation to those discussions, I think what's at the forefront of my mind when I think about legal education, legal technology, both in terms of education, but also as part of the wide profession, is really an underlying kind of issue about what do we really want from our future law graduates, what attributes we're trying to develop in them as part of a law degree. And necessarily, we need to think about what the wide profession needs from our students. And as we know, the move towards globalization, the ease at which we can all work on an international basis, and the use which the technology is having within the legal profession, it seems highly likely that as legal educators of our future lawyers, we're going to have to grapple and embed some of this new ways of working into our curriculum, or at least into perhaps awareness whilst on their degrees with us or other studies about the impact of technology in their futures. So I thought I'd kind of cover those two things and then save a bit of space at the end in case anyone's got any questions as well. So the kind of, just to go back to kind of the theme of kind of digitalization, and challenges in legal education, it really has kind of marked, as the kind of competency literacy suggests, that we never see students, and well, I don't see students in my lecture halls since we've been back kind of in person without a laptop in front of them, without some sort of phone to kind of take a note or to use it in those things. So technology, I see for my students, our first years, it's second nature. They're not being taught how to use a computer like I was back in the day. It just almost seems to be part of their kind of mechanism. They kind of use that as something which they expect to be used as part of their teaching and those things too. So we're kind of dealing with students, I'm sure we all are, who just have that ability to kind of use the technologies that are in front of them, particularly their own technology kind of with a small t, their own kind of laptop computers, you know, handheld devices, that type of stuff. So the university, as I see it, hasn't really caught up with that idea to some extent. I mean, we only had the ability for hybrid teaching, so to have the in-person and then live links for students who are studying off campus or internationally. We only got that as a result of the COVID and the pandemic. So the university hasn't really kept up with the idea that students probably are a bit more savvy than we are often. I include myself, I'm talking about myself probably in that, than we are often with the use of technology and the use it can be made of in an education footing, but perhaps also if they get used to using that, it's something that they will also use in their world of work as well. But that hybrid teaching technology, as my university refers to it as, really essentially allows students to study from an international location. So it's something which I actually think has had quite a positive impact for our students. So many of them not been able to travel to us for their post-studies, given the kind of visa issues or inability to travel due to COVID restrictions, but they've still been able to start their studies and they've still been able to kind of get involved through the hybrid technology. One of the downfalls of that though is there's an essence then that kind of gets lost along the way sometimes, which is possibly that community building. It's slightly easier to do on a face-to-face or in-person footing. So there's work to be done, not only in kind of instigating and developing and introducing this hybrid teaching facility or using Zoom for teaching we did last year, but kind of making sure that community building, that idea of kind of being part of something, doesn't get lost by studying in isolation from various locations around the world as well. So I strongly agree, this digital era does present opportunities, but also challenges as well. Not kind of challenges that can't be overcome, but certainly things that need to be on our minds as kind of educators as well. So I think the role of legal education, from my perspective, one of them really is to try and think about preparing our students for the world of work, with an acknowledgement, I guess, from my context in England, that we know our students will go on, if they want to be lawyers, to do the professional courses. So if they want to be a barrister, they'll go on to do the bar training course, for example. So we're not kind of a one-stop fits all in terms of the skills they need for future lawyer in that example, but we certainly are supposed to be helping our students navigate law school or postgraduate studies if they go on to do that. So they are attractive to future legal employers or other employers, depending on what they want their future careers to be. So I do see it as an obligation on my part to consider the modules I teach, how I kind of teach them. Am I nodding to the right ideas about kind of the move towards globalization, what that means for the legal profession, and just general, that kind of more soft technology issues about kind of how I'm integrating those in my own teaching with students as well. One of the things that's kind of been interesting for us as a law school is there really has been conversations, that kind of historical conversations actually, about the purpose of a law degree. And this idea that whilst there's an acknowledgement that the legal profession is a global entity, and ever more so given the ability to speak via those kind of technologies like Zoom and those type of things, and making the need to travel less and less needy. That kind of acknowledgement is there. There's also acknowledgement in legal education in England and kind of the UK, that really we are going to have students who are going to be working in the world of the legal profession, where things like coding, for example, or using technology in the courtroom that wouldn't necessarily be used now, they're going to be facing those challenges. There is still a bit of reluctance and resistance to bringing those type of issues into the curriculum in law schools. They're perceived in England, particularly in my jurisdiction, as something which is, well, that's for their later part of their studies. That's when they do their bar training course, for example. Our degree needs to set them up in a liberal kind of arts type vision, that kind of gives them critical analysis abilities. It allows them to read case law, to understand statute and interpret it via case law, and to improve written communication skills. That kind of a more traditional type of degree. So interestingly, a lot of this work around navigating the kind of the globalization, the kind of commercial awareness of our students, the work around making sure they have got those attributes, graduate attributes that might be attractive to the legal profession. They're often reserved for extracurricular activities. And certainly our Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research, so Kepler, our Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research in the law school, it very much is a body which kind of straddles two grounds. It kind of is something which allows our legal profession in, but also which allows our students to kind of navigate some of those new, some of those things they need to be aware of for their future careers as well. So I think there is a need for some urgency to kind of think beyond kind of a knee-jerk reaction in legal curriculum, certainly in my own jurisdiction, to probably think beyond the fact that it isn't probably just the job of the bar school providers to train students in relation to future technology challenges that they may face in their legal work. And maybe we need to think more about the curriculum. What job could it do to maybe invest some of those skills more in the kind of assessed work students do, rather than just in an extracurricular basis. So in my own teaching, I mean, I'm also somebody who needs to do a lot of reflection and thought on this. I'm not in any way suggesting that my colleagues or, you know, academics in England and kind of Wales are not doing their jobs. It's not my intention at all. Well, then to say it should be something that we're all starting to think about, not suggesting kind of knee-jerk reactions or quick kind of, you know, we'll just do something that'll do, but certainly thinking about how our own teaching, the things that we have some control over, are we using the basic technologies? Are we using those to our advantage? Are we nodding to students, even if we're not kind of doing a globalization module or a module on legal technology? Are we giving them the kind of information to say, this module doesn't exactly focus on that particularly, but from your perspective and your futures, maybe have a look at this, you need to start thinking about this. So I think there's ways of, even if it isn't a complete module, of softly bringing in some of those skills and making students aware of the remit of them as well. So just an example in my own teaching, I've have a module called Advocacy and Mooting, which was solely developed actually from my own experience of navigating towards being a barrister. And at law school, being somebody who did some advocacy, a small bit of mooting, not much more than that. And then arriving at bar school and kind of being probably overwhelmed is probably the right expression to use. and realizing actually that there were students who had done maybe a bit more than me in terms of getting ready for those courses. So having done some free legal advice, having done some pro bono, know what client work looked like, having done more advocacy, so actually practice those skills much more thoroughly than maybe I had done. So the module I developed kind of has that in mind for students who potentially might go on to the bar or any profession, and kind of transferable skills in that way. But one of the things I'm trying to do with the module more recently is to really think about just the use of the basic technology that we have available to us. So really making sure that students are recording their performances, listening to them back, reflecting on them, and using the kind of basic stuff that is available to us. So really trying to just, make sure that basic stuff is covered. But I'm also very mindful that not just post-COVID, but more broadly in the courts in England and Wales, there has been a move towards the use of technology in terms of live links for witness evidence. So whether that's for the defendant themselves giving their testimony, or whether that's for witnesses, this idea they don't need to be present in court. It can be done from either if they're in prison on remand, or whether it's individuals from a safe space giving their testimony to the court as witnesses. So the courts are, or have been, very slowly, I would say, getting used to that technology as well. And then as a result of COVID, full hearings have been, I imagine this is similar in as well, full hearings have been had in complete Zoom, kind of trial or a Zoom hearing, as we might put it. And I don't think that's going to move. That shift towards that use of technology where it can be used, rather than trying to schedule day-long court hearings where it's expensive, that it can be done much more effectively on Zoom type hearings. That doesn't seem to be lost in the mix. It seems to be something which our students need to be aware of, that they will have to navigate into using as well. And one thing that students don't really get a chance to kind of consider on a law degree, certainly not in the curriculum part of it, is in relation to how will they themselves navigate their own clients in their chambers, what systems will they be using to log their advice giving or their drafting. So it's an interesting kind of field. The students are kind of not quite at that training for the profession, but they still have questions around, well, what technology might I be using? And that isn't dealt with anywhere, even on a module to do with advocacy. It isn't. I certainly don't do that with the students. So it's something which is often, as I say, mocked up by the extracurricular work that students can do in my law school particularly. So before I speak about kind of extracurricular work and how that's kind of navigating technology in legal education terms, I just thought I'd mention some of the developments in the law school more generally in relation to an interest in research terms, and also students' interest in all things kind of globalization and technology. So we have in Birmingham Law School, for our final years and LLM students, they've got a broad diet really of topic areas, and they can choose a series of optional modules for undergraduate final year or LLM interest too. And recently, I'd say in the last 5 years, more recently for some of this, the modules have kind of grown. We've grown as a law school. We've got new areas of expertise in the law school. So everything from international and global law modules to criminal justice and kind of more civil company and those type of modules too. But students start to express to us, certainly in the last 5 years or so, a real interest in studying matters relating to globalization, technology, and kind of forms of regulation of both law in a kind of globalized way, and also that kind of connection between law and technology from a practical standpoint as well. And one of the things that's been quite interesting from the students' perspective is a push in their feedback to say they'd really like some education around the cross-cutting themes of law and science. Yeah. So what's happened really is kind of a set of modules with our kind of growing law school and new members of academic staff joining us. We've ended up with some interesting new modules that kind of span that global governance and technology field. So for example, We have international global government on the LLM studies for our students. We have cyber law modules for undergraduate LLM students, intellectual property, with a focus often on the technology issues on that front, again, for undergraduate and postgraduate. And also a new LLM for this year, which is a combined LLM degree on law and technology. And it's a degree which is in conjunction with our School of Computer Sciences at the University of Birmingham. So kind of intersectional kind of look at law and technology between the two departments. We've also had, given the academic kind of the changes in kind of personnel and the growth of our academic members of staff, we've had a rise in PhD applications as well on the theme of global governance and law and technology. And again, another interesting development on the postgraduate teaching front has been a complete distance learning module on environmental law and technology, so environmental law and technology. Now, what's interesting with that total online, that total distance online learning module is, actually the university, before this module was introduced, we had an expectation that we would make students, wherever they're studying in the world, come and see us on campus at least once over their period of distance learning. And actually for many students, it was only a 1-year course and they were doing an LLM at the point. It was an added expense to their studies. They'd chosen to do a distance learning because they wanted to be studying elsewhere in the world, but have the academic teaching from particular universities, so Birmingham Law School. And it actually wasn't a very positive part of the experience for them. They didn't see the need to do that. They could have done a Zoom, they could have done Skype at the time to talk to the academics. And actually, as a result of COVID this year, one of the kind of, I guess, interesting things is we no longer have that proponent as part of the environmental law distance learning LLM. Now it's completely online, and students do those kind of community connecting kind of building, and for them they do that by Zoom with their respective personal tutors for the module and those type of things too. So just interesting the way things kind of have developed over time, and what at one point of time may have seemed well, we need to see these students, we must let them see us in person, now has become kind of not the norm in terms of format either. So just having to think then about Birmingham Law School and where a lot of our, I guess, work on the future of the legal profession and technology is kind of pushed in a way. And that's to our extracurricular activities at Birmingham Law School. And this is mostly navigated through our Centre for Professional Legal Education and Research. So we have this whole suite of activities for students, and my role is heavily involved in kind of our careers and part of that, and also advocacy activities too. But within the extracurricular offerings, we do have everything from kind of careers events, so guest speakers on an international remit and also more local, and also pro bono, and like I said, advocacy activities as well. What we found recently is that there's been a real desire for students to attend careers events on the future of the legal profession, and more broadly, just what is a career in law. Those type of events are quite popular. But the ones that have tended to pique interest are really around the use that's been made already in practice around things like coding. What does that mean for the future lawyer? So students have got an interest in learning and keeping that current awareness open about their future careers. And in terms of thinking more softly around technology and legal education on this extracurricular basis, last year and over COVID, all those careers events had to shift online. So again, the use of kind of Zoom to kind of make sure that those activities still run and the students are getting that information they need to keep on top of the future developments. We've also developed, in terms of thinking about that global legal education focus as well. We do have a lot of international students in the law school, both at the undergraduate level and postgrad level too. And what's developed over, which has been great, actually, a great addition over the last few years, is international legal profession weeks. So weeks where we invite guest speakers from around the world, to kind of speak to students who we've got, to talk to them not only about if they want to practice in the UK, what that means for them in terms of visas, that type of stuff, but also actually in terms of a lot of our students don't want to stay with us in Birmingham or in the UK at all. They want to go back and they want to practice in their home, or they want to do it elsewhere in the world as well. So those kind of thinking globally about students' ability to go and be lawyers elsewhere in the world, or academics, or whatever it might be, that's kind of something which students have kind of also been asking for, and something which we've developed as an extracurricular offering for our students too. We've also, in terms of thinking about pro bono, one of our pro bono offerings is what we call free legal advice. And our students, well, we've teamed up with local barristers' chambers and solicitor firm, and they help our students advise clients, so real life clients, on matters kind of on a civil basis. So not criminal stuff, but things like housing or welfare benefits, that type of stuff. Students can, with the assistance of lawyers, help and navigate a client through some advice on those fronts. But what's been interesting about this area is students have to learn new case client technology. So actually client technology they might be actually having to use in practice. So storing their client's details, data protection issues, professional ethics in relation to all of that. And with a very soft understanding and introduction to the idea of coding. So this idea that we can use the technology and those databases to be able to find things for us, so they can find how many clients in the last year had an issue about housing or those type of things. So it's kind of an interesting way that the extracurricular activities are kind of engaging with that a kind of legal technology from an legal education perspective. On the advocacy front, we again, similar to careers, on the kind of very gentle use technology, all our kind of careers, all our kind of advocacy stuff I had to put online, as you can imagine, for last year, so all kind of via Zoom. What stayed this year is kind of a hybrid approach. So I've done all the skills training, which is currently just wrapping up, has all been done online via workbooks, and then students submit some written work for consideration. And then next semester for the internal competitions, there'll be a mixture of in-person on campus and Zoom use for students who aren't with us yet on campus as well. So again, not particular use of any kind of great shakes in terms of technology, but still in terms of allowing students to navigate through skills that the recruiters, the legal profession wants them to have by the end of their studies with us. So a way that the students still are able to, whether on campus or whether internationally, they can still get the skill training done on advocacy, and they can still participate as well. So they're really not put at a disadvantage in that way. So again, a positive use of legal education and thinking about the use that can be made of technology to assist in that way. Personally, I think in terms of advocacy, that some of the benefits of using Zoom are, one, that for external competitions that students get involved in the law school, in mooting or in client interviewing or any of the things that we offer, it's quite expensive often for students to pay to travel to participate in some of the external competitions. So they might be an international competition, they might be a competition that's in London where an overnight stay is required. Now we would help with that, but still the opportunity for some of these competitions to have been taken online removes that disparity and actually makes it a lot more attractive to students to get involved in as well. So there's some, again, positives in moving things online. Just thinking about the expectations from our employers, so thinking locally about the Birmingham legal market or more nationally, there's an expectation on all of our chambers and all of the law firms in England particularly, just that's kind of my focus. They all ask on their application forms, can you give us some evidence of things you've been doing at law school that show you understand what the skills of a lawyer are? So that hasn't changed despite COVID. I don't see that changing going forward. So personally, I think there's more space on the curriculum for those things to be embedded. At the moment as it stands, they tend to be navigated through extracurricular activities. Finally then, before there's space, if anyone did have any questions that you wanted to maybe raise. I've been involved in some discussions and events over the last couple of years with the local legal profession and more broadly with the Intercourt that are based in London as well. And those discussions have been around legal tech and the idea of the global world and kind of the expectations for the future legal graduate. Yeah, and those discussions really again were sometimes not always uncontroversial, on the basis that there's an expectation of what the law degree should do and what the wide legal profession might like us to be doing. And there's a reluctance to kind of, I know I'm repeating myself there, but a reluctance on the basis that it said the law degree's got a purpose, so traditionally has a purpose. It isn't to mould our students into lawyers, it's to teach them all those critical analytical skills that they could, if they wanted, take forward to the profession, but the purpose really isn't for that. So that kind of runs in the background to these discussions around legal tech and kind of this global world. However, some of the interesting things that have happened locally in the West Midlands, in Birmingham, where I am, has been discussions from the bar. So the West Midlands circuit of the bar have run several events on the role that coding might play for future lawyers, and the role that whether that means that actually the barristers themselves will be doing that, or whether it will be their clerks, what level of knowledge or expertise students would have before they leave law school in coding, and those type of things. So there are interesting debates, discussions, events happening around the use of technology and thinking about this kind of global remit. Not much more than that, though, I would say at the moment. It seems to be discussions rather than any kind of move to kind of take that any further. Some of the discussions at the Inns of Court in London, there are also some discussions there around the role of technology in legal education. And again, they do come back to, though, the broad implications of those debates for the traditional purpose of a law degree. So essentially, keeping that idea of a global world of the legal profession, the move towards a much more use of legal tech in that global world. And then this kind of controversial or kind of pull in a different direction. Well, what is the purpose of a law degree or a postgraduate degree for students in the current climate? So that's everything from me. Please feel free if you have any questions, let me know. I'll be happy to answer them. And yeah, thanks everyone.
Monica, Archana, before you thank her, or Monica, before you chip in, can I say something? Yeah, Teresa, as usual, it has been exceptional. You have covered the entire topic, and it's very relevant. The advices that you are giving, or what you have covered, is very, very relevant, particularly in view of the pandemic situation created by the COVID. So I have two small questions from you from the education point of view. From the education point of view, you spoke about LLM and digital and all those. So my first question is, which is bothering the mind of all universities around, I think. Do you think education has been hit? I'm using the term hit. It's a little, it's an odd term. But do you think education has been hit by the pandemic, or the sector has survived due to the online mode? You know, in concept of haves and have-nots, there are a lot of countries which do not have the good technology, or within a country, the technology is not available to everyone. So what are your views on that?
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, I completely agree. I'm in a very fortunate position to be in a jurisdiction where the technology was available to pivot quite quickly, I would say, to creating online material for students and those things. So yes, I think there's this kind of suggestion that every law school in every part of the world was able to do that. And that's just simply, as you say, not the case, right? It just isn't. So there is that idea that some legal education may have been hit detrimentally by the pandemic, and how we catch that up will be, I guess, difficult, because if you've missed a whole swathe of things and you can't actually navigate that through any online materials, what do you do apart from saying to somebody, you've got your books, have a read yourself? You know, there's not an awful lot, you know, you can do there. So I think legal technology has had a massive part to play from those institutions that can use it. I think it's been particularly useful. What's been interesting, students and staff alike, maybe, well, from my perspective in our law school, whilst we were able to navigate online very rapidly, actually students didn't actually receive a complete online learning experience particularly well. So I'll talk about the student experience and then the staff experience of that as well. But students really weren't geared up for the fact that they would lose that sense of kind of community almost, that they would lose the fact of studying with others. So kind of even discussion boards or creating little breakout rooms for them using the technology didn't give them that kind of same bite of kind of that interest that they may get from being present with students and learning from each other and navigating through it in that way. So the pivot was there. I think it saved legal education during the pandemic, but it wasn't always received as the best learning experience by our students. It is interesting as well. For my colleagues and for myself, I guess our reflections were we didn't have an awful lot of time to think about pivoting online. It was almost kind of a knee-jerk reaction was just, well, you've all got these online platforms, why don't you just put your materials online? And actually I didn't find it as easy as just kind of throwing a few things online or throwing my lecture notes online, because you knew you weren't going to see the students. So you had to kind of think about managing bite-sized chunks of that and trying to see how it might work best online. So it actually took a lot more in terms of pedagogy, thinking around kind of what you want to put up there. Great now of how to think about, maybe some of my courses didn't need those thousands of cases, I'm exaggerating, but some of these could be chopped. So it's always good to reflect. But the perception that we were all able to just completely switch to this online mode, I think was a false one. And I think it did lead to some staff kind of almost in panic mode as well as it being a pandemic about how to use those online tools. Now, thankfully, I've kind of kept up to date with those online tools. I'm somebody who kind of takes an interest. But there's many of my colleagues who wouldn't have used those tools before. They were traditional in the way they taught. They would just use lecture notes, those type of things. So yeah, it was almost a suggestion that we were all just able to go forth and kind of present these materials. Yeah, if that helps. Yeah.
So what do you propose? Is there going to be a complete shift to the online when the situation improves, or now with this online experience we are going to be on a hybrid mode?
Yeah, I'm not sure where we'll end up. Particularly my own institution is very keen to keep the on-campus learning in place. They're really very keen. That might not be for altruistic pedagogical reasons. I think obviously that's kind of a business model as well, that's in the background in terms of that. But certainly just to keep it more local in terms of my law school that I'm in, we see the benefits of a hybrid model, particularly given the climate in COVID and students not being able to travel to us. But there's something to be said, and that kind of magic that students have when they actually see each other face to face and can navigate with each other and talk about the topic area, that somehow isn't kind of always translating online. So I think that there will remain a place for on-campus kind of in-person teaching, although I do see the benefit of having that kind of hybrid ability to be able to teach that way as well. Yeah.
Monica, do you have something? Then Archana, I can see a question in the question answer box and one in the chat box.
Yes,
so
sir.
that also, after Monica has asked a question, that all these two questions also may be placed before Teresa.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, Monica.
Hi, thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Teresa. Hi. You were talking about legal tech towards the end of when you were finishing your talk. So my question, or rather a discussion the point that is there, is the challenge that would be faced by law schools in designing their curriculum, in sort of training the students to be able to use legal tech to their advantage, and specifically when we see legal delivery services changing and the tools that are being introduced. The curriculum, so what is the way forward? How do schools actually integrate? We've been talking about integrating technology, but we are using it only in terms of teaching and learning. But what about integrating technology to be helping them to be ready for their workforce or workforce ready, for the job life? That's what I would be wanting to discuss.
I think what in the law school, I think we are very aware that none of us actually as individuals, apart from a few of my colleagues who I'll mention in a minute. Like I don't have like if the technology doesn't work, I don't know what to do. So I'm not somebody who is very tech savvy at all. But I can I'll keep up to date with what I need to know, and I can use what I need to use. Essentially, we do have some colleagues who've come into us recently. So Professor Karen Young is just one example, and her work is very. So she looks not only just at law, but also kind of the use of technology in law, so that type of stuff. And she's got great links nationally and actually internationally with computer science departments too. So that's been actually something which I think the law school will be able to build on and draw on a bit more in terms of thinking about modules on the curriculum, which will help students not only think about what is technology, but how will it help them develop, both before they get to practice that's where they want to go, but also what's the importance of them and things we think in terms of regulation of that and the ethics behind using that kind of technology as well. So it's very new to us. It's not something which in the law school we've had an awful lot of. Professor Young's only been with us, I think it's the last 2-3 years. So it's kind of an area which is navigating towards. So we're lucky in that way. I think we are as a school kind of we do have it on our remit. I can't tell you that every one of us there has such knowledge or such connections, but it is something which I think not just our law school too. I think nationally it is something which is on the radar. Not fully envisioned yet though. It is something which law schools are starting to embed. I think like yourselves as well. From the question, yeah.
Right. Thank you so much. Because when we look at it, the way everybody is using technology, especially when we look at the client relationship with the lawyers, they come ready with the background search and everything, and they're like, okay, this is what you need to do, and the lawyers are like literally fighting for the space in terms of what the Google says or what you're seeing online may not be perfect for your particular case or scenario. So how you fight that, or how actually you make your students ready is what I keep thinking about in terms of the legal technology. We've been using tools for research, we've been using these tools for maybe drafting, but using these tools to actually enhance the delivery systems, how to bring your networks or bring your practice as cost effective, where people don't need to come to you, you can actually do online. That is what I think I would also be looking at towards development in the curriculum for these students. Thank you.
Ma'am, there are 2 more questions from our participants.
Yeah,
So the first question is from one of our faculty member, Ms. Asha Meena, and she states, a ship in the harbor is safe, but that is not what ships are built for. Observed by 19th century philosopher William Shedd. In other words, technology of high potential is of value if the potential is not exploited. As the shape of 2020 is increasingly defined by the coronavirus pandemic, digitalization is like a ship loaded with technology that has a huge capacity of mankind's combat against infectious disease. But it is still moored safely in the harbor. What are your views on it?
Thank you very much for your question. I think it's a really interesting one, and I really love the analogy. And I think it actually talks about me. I think I've been found out on the basis of what I mean by that is I think in my hands, if I was the only person who could talk about technology and how we could use it, we'll be using it in a very limited fashion. And I think that quick turnaround of things, becoming this kind of digitalization of things that we found with the pandemic meant that people like me and myself in law schools were just tasked with doing almost a bare minimum of technology in terms of bringing it into legal education. So I completely agree that we probably, although it's being used, I'm not sure it's being used in the most effective way always, and we're not taking full advantage of what the capabilities of that technology really are. And I know it's something that's on my mind, particularly my next semester teaching. It's going to be kind of my own advocacy meeting module, and it's something I'm thinking about at the moment in terms of trying to make sure that technology is being used where it can use it in full force as well. But yeah, it's a really interesting point. Yeah, thank you.
Other question from one of our students. Shaurya Prashar. He wants to ask how could the new variant of the coronavirus being found in different nations impact the smooth functioning of the various education institutes? Wouldn't this have a negative impact on the upcoming generation?
Yeah, I think we're all kind of I don't know about you, but I'm watching the news and hoping that we don't end up in a kind of another lockdown or any of those things. And so yes, I think the question's a good one, and I think it actually goes back to my general's question or comment earlier about the kind of have and have-nots. Thinking about this more globally as well. So some legal institutions not having access to technology and those things is just going to remain the same this time with the new variant of coronavirus as well. So some institutions been able to continue and navigate and can do more online again. Some institutions just maybe not been able to get much on at all in terms of legal education. I think it's interesting, the last part of the question about, I think it was to do with the negative impact on future generations of lawyers. So the fact their legal education has been impacted by the corona virus. Yeah, I can see that. I think one of the jobs of legal educators at the moment is trying to almost do a bit of compensation for that. So it might not necessarily be possible if somebody was in their final year, they've already left us after their year last year, but certainly with our first years and second years and postgrad students coming in, trying to make sure that they are getting every recourse that they need to make sure that the coronavirus didn't have the impact that might make their studies, why was it doing this? It's coronavirus time, nobody recognises it. And certainly actually as a law school, we've been quite keen to talk to the legal profession in our area about some knowledge about what they think about our student studies. So telling them that, they only did part of an assessment because it was COVID times, or telling them that they only did this part of the course because we couldn't get that done, or those things. So there's a real acceptance, both in my local area and nationally, from the legal profession, that that's a position students were in. Now, I can't speak internationally on that front, but certainly from my own jurisdiction, that joined up thinking actually has been done quite well between the local profession, the law schools, and more nationally as well, in that way as well. But I think it's something which students will feel the burden of rather than the other way around. Yeah.
So, ma'am, there
are two questions in the question answer box also.
Yes.
If you can read.
Yes, sir.
Mayank and another student have asked it.
Okay,
I've just checked up. Our Chief Guest Justice Swatantra Kumar should be joining in another 3-4 minutes time. So we have a little time for these questions. You may go ahead, please.
Yes, sir. So, ma'am, there's another question from one of our LLM student, Mayank Mishra. Would the University of Birmingham's legal aid program benefit from working with or through the CAB, Citizen Advice Bureau networking in England and Birmingham?
Thank you very much for your question. Actually, we do. So as part of our pro bono group, one of the things that we do is the free legal advice unit that I spoke about. But actually another initiative, I mean, there's many pro bono activities that we run. So street law, lots of different things. And one of the things that students do actually is that they do work alongside the Citizen Advice Bureau. So a pro bono group are trained by Citizen Advice Bureau, and then they work alongside on a voluntary basis with the local advice bureau. What's interesting on that front, I know you mentioned legal aid there, is that more and more members of our local communities are having to rely on free legal advice. And this idea that for lots of what used to be available in terms of support for your legal advice through legal aid is no longer available post the reform of legal aid in England and Wales. So the Citizen Advice Bureau actually is having a big challenge in kind of making sure that it can meet the demand from lay clients in relation to advice on housing and benefits and those type of things. So students at the University do actually help out with our local Citizen Advice Bureau as well. But it seems in Birmingham and nationally that there's such an essential institution at the minute, Citizen Advice Bureau. Yeah, thanks for your question.
Another question from another LLM student, Kompal Jain. Ma'am, like you said, there has to be an integration between online and physical, but will it not create different kind of gaps in understanding and relationship of students and teachers?
Yes, and I think I would say yes. I think what I would say is, because things happen so quickly and we're all pushed to kind of we're available, push things online. I think what was lost in that kind of translation was a bit of joined up thinking about what this would mean for both the educator, the teacher, and also the student, and both being educators, if you think about it in that way, getting their feedback from the students is equally important. And I think one of the things that wasn't really thought through enough was, how would it feel to be a student in isolation? Like, I know I felt recording my lectures in isolation, you felt a bit daft because you were talking to yourself. But I imagine actually studying in isolation, trying to find a space to study in a home where you've got a family or those type of commitments as well. It just, that type of stuff was forgotten. Not because educators or law schools were trying to forget those issues. Just the point was, get some materials out, get some stuff ready for them. And those kind of more nuanced ideas about kind of, where will students study in isolation? What was the home setup like? Have they got access to computers and technology to do this kind of online study? I don't think that type of stuff actually was at the forefront of this rush to put things online. So I agree that kind of disparity between the online kind of experience was there. Hybrid learning, I don't think is going to go anywhere. I think we are now going forward. I think most institutions will offer some sort of hybrid education. Well, personally, I still think there's a good place for those kind of more physical, in-person, on-campus interactions too. I think there's definitely a place for that. And no more so, I find, than when students actually come together after a seminar or in advance and they're talking about their own study skills or the content or working on a project together. It's in those moments often where students actually get the most out of our work with them. And I'd be remiss to say that can be done in the same way on an online portal completely. Yeah, that's just my opinion on that one. But yeah, thanks for the question. Thanks, everyone.
Ma'am, if you allow me, there are a few more questions. So there's a question from one of our students in LLB final year, and she's very much interested.
Archana,
yes, sir.
Archana, I think Justice Swatantra Kumar is joining. So we will take one more question, right?
Okay, sir.
I see Justice Swatantra Kumar joining. It is saying connecting to audio, maybe it is taking little time. So you may just take one question more.
Okay, sir.
And meanwhile, sir will join, and then we can, right?
Ji, sir. So, if I may continue. So Gauri wants to ask, what does the University of Birmingham look for in a student who is applying for the admission in LLM? What is the basic approach of the admission department while checking for applications?
Okay, great stuff. So I might see you then.
She's a very bright student. She's a very bright student, and she's Teresa. She's a very bright student, I must admit, and she's applying to your university. She's also thinking of applying to your university also. So we'll just quickly take Justice Swatantra Kumar sir has already joined.
Oh, well, okay, yeah. I'll answer.
You may answer this, please.
I know you've got another speaker, so just very final answer them from me. Obviously, it'd be a pleasure to have any of you come and see me in Birmingham and be students there. What I would say about the LLM, obviously a 2-1 a degree level is part of the application process. Beyond that, actually, there is a kind of a small personal statement section. And really what I would suggest that you have a good look at the Birmingham Law School's online resources, so the web page. Why I say that is, it'll ask you in the application why you're interested in doing an LLM with us. And as part of answering that question, if you know what the modules available to you are, who teaches them, why you might be interested in some of the work that's going on there, it just helps you navigate that part of the question a little bit easier. Also, if you've done anything to do with extracurricular stuff, so if you have been involved in any volunteering or mooting or whatever, debating or whatever it is that you can do, mention that as well as something which is about you, that kind of sings to your abilities. And also, if there's any extracurricular activities you'd like to do with us when you arrive with us, also mention those as well in your application. So they're the general type of things that we'd look for on an application for LLM. But I wish you all the best of luck. My details are very much on the law school's webpage, so if anyone ever did want to have a chat about anything like that, you're more than welcome to. And thanks so much again for the invite. It's been a pleasure talking to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for sharing your insightful thoughts with us today and answering the questions for the participants and the gathering. Now we welcome Mr. Justice Swatantra Kumar, as he has graced us with his presence Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Most welcome from the Amity University and Amity Law School.
Good afternoon, sir, and very kind of you to have joined us. I know, sir, you have been very, very busy throughout the day.
No.
But I'm so grateful, sir, you have joined us again, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
I now request Major General P.K. Sharma, Professor and Director, Amity Law School, Dean Faculty of Law, for the brief introduction of Amity Law School, Amity University, Haryana, and to present the report of the conference.
May I have your permission, Lordship, to present the report?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Lordship. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Universities and colleges are expected to efficiently and effectively create knowledge, improve equity, and respond to student needs, keeping this as the aim. Amity University, Haryana is committed to furthering the cause of higher education in India, and we at Amity Law School are passionate about grooming our students, not only as thorough professionals, but also to become good human beings with values and sanskars. At Amity, emphasis is not exclusively being paid towards making students academically brilliant, but as to build true leaders and team players, thus preparing them for an everlasting journey of wisdom and knowledge. We at Amity University, Haryana are driven by the ideals of internationalization, industry, integration, and innovation. In just few years of its establishment, Amity Law School has come alive with creativity and ingenuity. Research and innovation are way of life here, focusing on practical learning through real-life projects and endeavoring towards the holistic development of its students. Our alumni now occupy positions in judiciary, prestigious law firms, and corporate houses. A large number is making us proud as practicing lawyers. The brilliant young minds at the law school are nurtured under the tutelage of a world-class faculty that inculcates innovative thought and has been able to initiate an interdisciplinary approach to all topics of study. Amity Law School, Gurugram, currently inhabits nearly 600 students who are ready to take on the world and become the leaders of tomorrow. To keep students abreast with the latest developments in the field of law, the curriculum is updated by industry advisory boards comprising of top law professionals, eminent judges and jurists with emphasis on practical training. Students are encouraged to visit different layers of existing judicial dispensation to acquire a first-hand introduction to legal issues, actual court craft, and range of legal remedies available. The law school prides itself in the fact that it teaches its students law through various means and methods, such as conferences, moot courts, parliamentary debates, quiz competitions, etc. In keeping with this tradition, we organize this 2 days international conference on legal prospects and challenges of globalization and digitalization and international perspective. The conference was inaugurated by Honorable Minister of State, Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India on 26 November 2021. Due to technical glitch, the chief guest couldn't connect online. Hence, his message was read out. Conveying his best wishes for the conference, the Honorable Minister congratulated Amity Law School for organizing this conference on such a relevant topic. He appreciated the decision to hold the conference as it is right time to address the emerging challenges in the field of globalized and digitalized world. He praised the constant hard work and efforts of MIT Law School and conveyed his blessings for the conference. We were blessed with the presence of Honorable Founder President, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, and our dynamic Pro-Vice Chancellor, Dr. Padmakali Banerjee. In her address, the Pro-Vice Chancellor emphasized on the significance and relevance of globalization and digitalization in the current times and congratulated everyone to be part of the international conference. The Honorable Vice Chancellor of MIT University, Haryana, Dr. P.B. Sharma, in his recorded message, provided the utmost guidance and encouragement to follow the path of sovereignty and truthfulness. Honorable Founder President, Dr. Ashok K. Chauhan, motivated the participants and everyone present with his valuable words. He said that it is a very thought-provoking theme and he looks forward to meaningful discussions and a positive outcome. He stressed that it is more important to imbibe good human values in all walks of life, and MIT strives to provide these to its students. With his blessings, we concluded our inaugural session and commenced the first technical session on digital economy and legal challenges. The session was chaired by Professor Amar Sundaram, General Counsel, Senior Vice President Legal, and Chief Compliance Officer, NEC Corporation India Private Limited, and co-chaired by Dr. Atul Sood, Director Legal, Regulatory and Corporate Affairs Division at Perfetti Van Mille, India. The session commenced with the opening remarks by Professor Amar Sundaram, who started by sharing his happiness about his 5-year-long association with MIT University. He appreciated the theme of the session and stated that no machine can ever replace humans. Professor Sundaram also put forward his views on the importance of artificial intelligence and the relevance of technology in the COVID-19 era. This session was followed by presentations by various presenters belonging to different legal professions, covering topics such as changing contours of fundamental competition law in a digitalized economy by Garima Gupta, IPR concerns and legal enforcement of open source by Ms. Zishan Hashmi, cryptocurrencies and legal challenges by Sonia Maan, and legal issues in IPR in the era of digitalization by Vaswa Sharma. In continuation of these presentations, a flurry of questions raised by the panelists were duly answered by the presenters, thereby making the session very interactive. At last, the session ended with concluding remarks by the co-chair, Dr. Atul Sood. He mentioned a book, Fourth Industrial Revolution by Klaus Schwab, calling the digital revolution a kind of revolution that is going to stay for a very long time to come. Professor Amar Sundaram, in his concluding remarks, congratulated MIT Law School and all the participants for such a wonderful session. In the end, vote of thanks were delivered by Mr. Sanjay Kumar Pandey, Assistant Professor, MIT Law School. The second session of the conference was on digitalization and challenges in legal education. This session was chaired by Professor Dr. Saroj Bohra, Director, MIT Law School, MIT University, Rajasthan, and Mr. Matthew Sloan, Vice President, Global Litigation Services, APAC. It was co-chaired by Dr. Stelina Jolly, Senior Assistant Professor at the Faculty of Legal Studies, South Asian University. Professor Dr. Saroj Bohra, in her opening remarks, stated that the education sector, along with everybody else, suffered a lot because of the pandemic, but appreciated the promptness by which digitalization was used to overcome the issue. The papers presented focused on the issues related to education in online medium, and the presentations included the topics such as copyright law challenges to online education, a look at the question of access by Apurv Pragya, legal technology and education by our own LLB student Ashwati Sudhir, Impact of Digitalization on Legal Education in India by Dr. Narendra Kumar, and Virtual Transformation of Classrooms in COVID-19 period, and Analytical Study by Dr. K.B. Asthana, and Adapting to Challenges in Legal Education. During pandemic, a UAE experience by Dr. Sagi Geeta Sethu and Maclean Pereira, who joined us from Amity University, Dubai campus. Dr. Stelina Jolly, in a closing remarks, appreciated the smooth transition from traditional to the digital platform with regard to education around the globe. The concluding remarks were delivered by Mr. Matthew Sloan, wherein he mentioned that there is no alternative to face-to-face learning, as the social aspect and personal engagement is otherwise missing. Therefore, digitalization needs to be embraced and folded with traditional ways of learning. This session concluded with vote of thanks presented by Dr. Vijay Pal Singh, Assistant Professor, Amity Law School. The day 2, that is today, also had 2 technical sessions. The third session of the conference, that is the first session of today, was on new media, right to privacy and democracy in digitalized world, and was chaired by Major General Rajinder Kumar, Ati Vishesh Seva Medal, Director, Amity Law School, Amity University, Madhya Pradesh. The session was co-chaired by Colonel R. Balasubramanian, Vishesh Seva Medal, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. In his opening remarks, Major General Rajinder Kumar highlighted the significance of the topic of the session, the importance of Article 17 of ICCPR, and stated that right to privacy is not confined to India, rather it is internationally recognized concept and is of paramount importance. The papers presented focused on the topics such as impact of digitalization on privacy and fundamental rights of prostitutes by Damayanti Kanwar Rathore, e-governance, a delicate balance between data privacy and future digitization by Dr. Vinay Sharma, rise of OTT platforms, a critical appraisal by Nidhi Kaushik and Tanvin Anand, and the information technology guidelines for intermediaries and digital media ethics code rules 2021 towards a brighter path by Dipender Singh. The session concluded with the closing remarks by Colonel R. Balasubramanian. He suggested that future is digital and all must adapt themselves to changing scenarios, and being in legal field, we must get accustomed to changing technological needs. He also mentioned that the limitations of technology must be cautiously considered, and he very rightly stated, your right to swing your arms ends just where the other man's nose begins. The concluding remarks were delivered by Major General Rajinder Kumar. He emphasized that there is no need to depend on data protection till the time we are prudent about sharing our personal data, and there is certainly a need to upgrade our digital literacy, as social media is a good servant but a bad master. The session concluded with the vote of thanks delivered by Ms. Sanjum Bedi, Assistant Professor, Amity Law School. The final session, the fourth session of the conference, on challenges, synergy in policy framing and sustainable development goals in post-COVID digitalized world, was chaired by Dr. Shuang Tandin, President, Royal Thimphu College, Bhutan. It was co-chaired by Mr. Ishan Chaturvedi, Founder Director and NV Paul, and Assistant Dean, Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability. While highlighting the theme of the session and appreciating its relevance, Dr. Tandon, in his opening remarks, encouraged and welcomed the participants to present their research work on the theme. Mr. Ishan Chaturvedi, in his opening remarks, made a very important statement. Cleanest form of energy is the one which you don't use. He shared an anecdote in this regard with the participants of the session. The session had interesting presentations on topics such as electronic evidence and overview of call data records, the CDRs, by Colonel Dr. A.K. Vashisht, digitalization in corporate social responsibility, issues and challenges by Anushka Malik Tomar, IPR protection and its importance for developed and developing countries by Dharam Vashisht, and need to accelerate the SDGs in post-COVID scenario by R. Pril. The closing remarks by Dr. Tendin were in appreciation of the hard work and the efforts made by the presenters. He emphasized that it has been a learning experience for him since he doesn't come from law background. He also congratulated the participants to overcome the challenge of presenting their research work within the prescribed time frame in an exceptional manner. He also appreciated Amity Law School for identifying and selecting the theme and various sub-themes of the international conference that hold immense importance in current times. The concluding remarks were delivered by Mr. Ishan Chaturvedi, wherein he backed the thoughts of Dr. Shwang Tandon and stated that it has been a wonderful experience of learning for him and enhancing his knowledge on various topics of the session. He also thanked and appreciated the presenters who put in so much efforts. Lastly, he thanked the organizing committee for organizing the international conference on such an important theme. In the end, vote of thanks were delivered by Ms. Papya Golder, Assistant Professor, Amity Law School. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. At his best, man is the best of all animals. Separated from law and justice, he is the worst. Today, we have the pleasure to welcome the presence of an eminent jurist, Honorable Mr. Justice Savtantra Kumar, former Judge, Supreme Court of India, and former Chairperson, National Green Tribunal. Justice Savtantra Kumar served as an additional district and session judge in Himachal Pradesh High Court, additional judge of Delhi High Court, permanent judge of Punjab and Haryana High Court. His stature is reflected aptly from his elevation from Delhi High Court to the position of Chief Justice of Delhi High Court. The Lordship is well known for his honesty, integrity, and excellent behavior. In his court, the scales of justice has been a great temple of justice. His unbiased approach and dedicated hard work have led to his elevation to Supreme Court of India in December 2009. Justice Kumar was appointed as chairperson of National Green Tribunal in December 2012, while he was a sitting judge of the Supreme Court with the vision to build a green court of India that would pave the way for a global environmental justice system. Justice Kumar delivered several landmark judgments that added a new dimension to environmental jurisprudence. Lordship's contribution and achievements in the area of environmental justice delivery system made him a renowned environmental exponent. His style of justice delivery system is named globally. May I have the pleasure of inviting Honorable Mr. Justice Savtantra Kumar to address the gathering. Sir, please.
Good afternoon to all present. General Sharma, distinguished members of the faculty, distinguished delegates from different parts of the world, dear students and other delegates. Firstly, I would like to compliment the Amity Law School of Amity University for holding such a international event on a topic which is of a considerable significance and importance as of now. Today, the topic legal prospects and challenges of a globalized and digital world and international perspective is a topic which makes itself absolutely clear that we are talking digitization and globalization, obviously at the international level. See, India is a developing country, and the availability of both these aspects is not so easy. We are a very diverse country with a diverse culture, highly populated, having limited means, but still, even during the COVID-19 period, both these aspects was shown to be very effectively implemented by various pillars of the governance in our country, especially in the field of education and dispensation of justice. It played a very significant role because of the methodologies, technologies adopted by even the Supreme Court of India, the High Courts, even the district courts, and all educational institutions, including Amity, which did not in any manner lacked to ensure that the field of education and dispensation of administration of justice does not suffer on account of non-availability of physical hearings, physical parents in the classes. So it was a great effort put in by all concerned. Computers and internet are significant innovations which have brought radical changes in our lives. The consequences of globalization and digitization are felt in every aspect of our daily lives, our societies, and our economies. The digitization is globalizing economies and making economic relationship borderless. Digitization and globalization have created great opportunities. Digital globalization is the new era of the global flows. The rapid growing flows, international trade and finance that characterize the 20th century have flattened or declined since 2008. Digitization is often associated with heavy reliance on intangible assets. Digitization has three fundamental characteristics that affect the geographical organization, reprogrammability, infrastructure enumerability, and intelligibility. The reprogramming of digital technology fundamentally alters the nature of all the industries. The second defining aspect of digitization, its infrastructure character, has a transformative impact on initiation and coordination of cross-border interrelations. Digital infrastructure makes productive digital assets frictionally accessible from anywhere. With regard to the third characteristics, digitization articulates themselves have no physical presence. Digital technology and infrastructures are not location bound. From education to doctor's appointment to courts hearing, every possible task was completed through digitization and digital platforms, the digital globalization is the new era of the global flows and reference in this regard of COVID-19 events. Cyber crimes and cyber terrorism. Cyber territories jurisdiction is a casualty of anonymous nature of internet. Internet does not tend to make geographical and jurisdictional boundaries, but internet user remains in physical jurisdiction and are subject to law. A single transaction on the internet may involve the laws of at least 3 jurisdictions, which are as under: laws of nation in which user resides, laws of the nation that apply where the server hosting the transaction is located, laws of the nation which apply to the person or organization with whom the transaction takes place. Another major area of concern is net neutrality, which affects the regulation of the infrastructure of internet. Though it is not so obvious to most internet users, but every packet of data sent and received by every user on internet passes through routers and transmissions infrastructure owned by a collection of private and public entities. Worldwide, the governments are struggling not only with the increasing level of cybercrime, but also with the complexities of securing electronic evidence. Security of e-evidence is very important for justice. It is challenging in the context of cloud computing where data is disturbed to different service. These challenges are currently being addressed by the Council of Europe Cybercrime Convention Committee, which represent the state parties to the Budapest Convention on Cybercrime. While India was confronted with the same challenges, it is not participating in the work, sharing experience in shaping future international solutions, as it has not yet decided to join this treaty. The current scale, nature, and impact of cybercrime are such that it not only underestimates confidence and trust in information and communication technologies, but also represents a serious threat to the fundamental rights of individuals, rule of law in cyberspace, and democratic societies. The Executive Director of UN Office on Drugs and Crime highlighted the importance of cooperation for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals and countering the rising threat of crime online. And it is congratulatory said by the United Nations Secretary General, who said cybercrime is an area in which there is much work to do and no time to waste. It is therefore important to have international legal instruments, and even the establishment of enforcement authority is not sufficient. Member state and non-member state should also cooperate, coordinate with the authorities to ensure prevention of the cyber crimes. Well, with these few words, what I really wish to say is that today it is difficult to imagine that the humanity can progress without really working on the development of both the globalization and digitization at a global level. The need is not a mere luxury, it's a need of the hour. As you can see that but for the digitization and for the globalized entire working of commercial, social, economic field, the things would have been difficult across the world for the purposes of really bringing this to such a level. Digitization has played a very important role even in normal times in the courts. Right from the Supreme Court, the High Courts, and even the district courts in India now are digitization taken into entire records. So entire paperwork was being converted into digital form so that there is greater element of maintenance and longer period they can survive, and the space cost, which is tremendous in our country now, is reduced. So all this is relatable to our day-to-day living and life. I really, again, congratulate all concerned on the scene, behind the scene, who have organized this conference. During the report, General Sharma mentioned that how it progressed from every technical session to the inaugural session, and how much of interest was shown by all concerned. And there is a great learning from this entire international conference, which has been held by the Amity Law Schools. While congratulating them, I thank all of you for having given me an opportunity to share my thoughts with you this afternoon. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Sir, for your inspirational words. I will fail in my duty if I don't mention that whenever requested, you have blessed us with your presence and words of wisdom. It is our pleasure and privilege to have received the blessings and good wishes from Mr. Kaushal Kishore, Minister of State for Housing and Urban Affairs for Government of India, for our inaugural as well as for our valedictory ceremony. As he was unable to join the conference virtually due to some technical glitch, we received his video messages. Honorable Minister, esteemed founder president Dr. Ashok Chauhan, and our charismatic leader, Honorable Chancellor Dr. Asim Chauhan. We would be delighted to share the same with you. I request our IT team to please play the video.
सम्मानित अतिथिगण, विश्वविद्यालयों के अधिकारियों, प्राध्यापकों, विद्यार्थियों और देश विदेश से इसका कॉन्फ्रेंस में जुड़े प्रतिभागियों, आप सब लोगों का मैं अभिनंदन करता हूं। वर्तमान समय को अगर सही शब्दों में परिभाषित किया जाए, ये कहना उपयुक्त होगा कि वर्तमान युग डिजिटलाइजेशन का युग है। वैश्विक महामारी कोरोना के प्रभाव वश में डिजिटलाइजेशन और तकनीक के इस्तेमाल को एक नई दिशा मिली है। ऐसे में एमटी विश्वविद्यालय विभाग द्वारा इस महत्वपूर्ण विषय पर चौथी इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस आयोजित करना एक सराहनीय कदम है और इसके लिए ये संस्थान बधाई का पात्र है। मैं एमटी यूनिवर्सिटी के संस्थापक डॉक्टर अशोक कुमार चौहान डॉक्टर तथा चांसलर डॉक्टर असीम चौहान जी का आभार व्यक्त करता हूं, जिनके अथक प्रयासों के कारण शिक्षा जगत में भारत एक नए आयाम स्थापित कर रहा है। मैं एमटी यूनिवर्सिटी के कुलपति प्रोफेसर पीवी शर्मा, प्रोफेसर वाइस चांसलर प्रोफेसर पद्मा खली और विधि विभाग के निदेशक मेजर जनरल पीके शर्मा जी को इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के आयोजन के लिए बहुत बहुत बधाई देता हूं और आभार भी व्यक्त करता हूं। एक निवेदन भी साथ में आप सब लोगों से आग्रह पूर्वक करना चाहता हूं कि नशा मुक्त समाज आंदोलन अभियान कौशल का के तहत पूरे देश में नई पीढ़ी के लड़के और लड़कियों को नशे से बचाने के लिए अपने अपने यूनिवर्सिटीज़ में, अपने अपने क्लासेस में नशे से होने वाले आर्थिक, सामाजिक, शारीरिक और मानसिक नुकसान क्या होते हैं और नशे करने वाले लोग उम्र से पहले जिंदगी उनकी ख़त्म हो जाती है, ऐसे लोगों को भी आप समझा करके नशा मुक्त भारत बनाने में योगदान करने का काम करें। ये भी लोगों को संकल्प कराने का काम अवश्य करेंगे, ये मुझे पूरा विश्वास है। धन्यवाद। थैंक यू।
The time has come for the declaration of best presenters of the conference. I request you all to put your hands together for the winners. For session 1 on digital economy and legal challenges, the award of the best presenter goes to Mr. Zishan Hussain Hashmi. For session 2, the award goes to Dr. Segi Geetha Sethu and Mekmin Pereira for their paper on the theme digitalization and challenges in legal education. For the third session, the award goes to third session was on new media, right to privacy and democracy in digitalized world, and the award goes to Dr. Vinay Sharma. For the fourth session on challenges synergy in policy framing and sustainable development goals in post-COVID digitalized world, the award goes to Dr. Colonel Arun Kumar Vashish.
Thank you so very much.
For our awardees. As we are concluding our conference, the time has come to draw the curtain to our program as we conclude the conference. A word of special thank is towards our esteemed guests, dignitaries, and participants. So I request Ms. Monica Yadav, Associate Professor, Amity Law School, to please propose a word of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Rachna. John F. Kennedy once said that as we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter words, but to live by them. We at Amity Law School do strive to live by all the words of wisdom that are said and that we hear from everybody who bestows us with their presence. Honorable Mr. Justice Swatantra Kumar, former Judge Supreme Court of India and former Chairperson NGT, Ms. Teresa Lynch, Senior Lecturer and Director of Advocacy and Bar Careers, Birmingham Law School, University of Birmingham, United Kingdom, respected Vice Chancellor, Sir, Professor Dr. P.B. Sharma, Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Padma Kali Banerjee, Dean Law Faculty, Professor and Director, Amity Law School, Major General P.K. Sharma, our most valued invited guests, ladies and gentlemen. It is my privilege to have been asked to propose a vote of thanks on this occasion. At Amity Law School, we strive to provide the best ways to learn through experience, so that not only our students, but we, the faculty members, also learn to be wiser and shine in our chosen paths. With an aim to stimulate research and critical thinking, we organize many academic and co-curricular activities like conferences, seminars, workshops, moot court competitions, debates, quizzes, to name a few. I, on behalf of Amity Law School, Amity University, Haryana, and the entire organizing team, and on my own behalf, extend a very hearty vote of thanks to all resource persons and presenters for sharing with us your findings and opinions during these 2 days of the conference. We are very grateful to Shri Kaushal Kishore, Minister of State for Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India, who due to connectivity issues yesterday and heavy commitments in his schedule today was unable to join personally on either of the days, for his messages and blessings for the international conference. It's a great honor for me to convey our heartfelt thanks to Honorable Mr. Justice Swatantra Kumar, former Judge Supreme Court of India and former Chairperson NGT, for sparing his precious time to be here with us. Sir, we are deeply honored with your presence and benevolence, for always blessing us whenever we have requested you. Thank you. I would like to thank our distinguished guests, Ms. Teresa Lynch, Senior Lecturer, Birmingham Law School, University of Birmingham, for sparing her valuable time and sharing her insights. Thank you, ma'am. I'm extremely obliged to our founder president, who is known for his passion for education. I thank him for his encouragement, guidance, and providing a stimulating environment for such educational developments. It is his vision and leadership that has been the inspiration in all our endeavors. I place on record my profound thanks and sincere gratitude to Honorable Chancellor Dr. Asim Chauhan for sparing his valuable time and being a guiding light. Sir, your dynamism, leadership, and unconditional support in all our endeavors makes us strive for achieving greater heights. I also convey thanks to our Honorable Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. P.V. Sharma, Pro Vice Chancellor, Professor Dr. Padma Kali Banerjee, Major General G.S. Bal, Dean Students Welfare, for their endless encouragement and support. I would like to convey thanks to Dr. Gunjan Sanjeev, Director, International Affairs, Amity University, Haryana, for her support in providing international exposure and support for this conference. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our education partners, SEC Online, media partners, Legal Bytes, and Lex Revolution for their support. I would also like to thank the IT team and our own students who were instrumental in the smooth conduct of this conference. It is said that the greatest gift of leadership is a boss who wants you to be successful. I, on behalf of the entire law school, would like to thank Major General P.K. Sharma, our director, and Dean Faculty of Law for driving each one of us to succeed in all our endeavors. We succeed because of your unconditional support. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, an event like this cannot happen overnight. The wheels start rolling weeks ago. It requires planning and a bird's eye view for details. We have been fortunate enough to be backed by a team of very motivated and dedicated colleagues who know their job and are result-oriented. I would like to take this opportunity to appreciate the efforts of Mr. Pranshul Pathak, Faculty Convener, Dr. Archana Sehrawat Dhawan, and Dr. Ankita Sharma, Organizing Secretaries, and all the members of the ALS faculty and staff for their efforts in making this event a success. I would be remiss if I do not appreciate the efforts of students coordinators, Ananya Gaur and Yashika Manichanda. Thank you, all the participants, for having made this conference a success. I once again thank everybody for having been a part of this success and making it a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. And once again, Lordship, we are very grateful to you for having spared your time and shared your words of wisdom with us. Thank you, Lordship. Thank you. Thank you, all the participants. Very grateful to you. Thank you.
May I just request everybody to switch on their cameras so that we can have one photograph with everybody in the frame. I request all the participants and all the faculty members to switch on their cameras, please.
Take it. Whoever is there.
Right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so very much.